Hello, everybody. Welcome to Module 4. It's been great to see so many of you in the discussion boards and in your assignments. It's been really great to get a sense of the class and what everybody is doing. Um, as we move into this week, I wanted to have a little bit more of a uh, structured announcement and kind of talk a little bit about thesis statements and the drafting process. So as we move into this week, we're moving out of our exploratory phase and into defining our thesis statement. And a lot of times this can be a process that can feel really anxiety inducing because it feels like you have to commit to the thing that you're going to be writing extensively about throughout the rest of this project. And I want, even though this is an important part, one of the things that I want to underscore is the fact that this process should kind of flow organically out of your research process and out of the work that you've been doing to kind of determine some sources and some ideas about the topic that you select. Okay, so a couple things as we move through, and I'm going to share my screen here just to show you. Um, and one thing I want to say, I really like this textbook, and I highlighted some of the readings that you're given in this week's module. Um, all of them really have to do with what's called the inside out drafting process. And in the inside out drafting process, what you're doing is you're essentially doing a memory dump, or you are doing a free write. You're taking all of the ideas that you've accrued throughout your research and you're putting them down, and you're trying to figure out what a common thread is throughout all of that. So you're kind of trying to determine your thesis statement through a free write, to figure out what is it that you think. What are you trying to persuade your audience? Who is your audience? Who do you think needs to hear your message? And so when we start thinking, let me just share here. We'll get there eventually. Hold on. There we go. We'll see how proficient I am with YouTube and whether I can edit this out. All right. So as we begin thinking about um, the thesis creation process, one of the easiest ways to think about it, I think, is through this idea of the inside out drafting process. And so it really takes some of the pressure off of having to, come up with a thesis out of the blue, and really looks at the writing that you've done around some of your sources to determine your thesis from your research question. Right. So as you're going to read this week, a thesis statement is really just a summary of the main point of the claim on an essay or research paper. And so in this case, we're writing persuasive essays, but really we're using research and we're using our sources to drive this point home. It guides the direction of your writing, and it links your arguments together and keeps your arguments, your persuasive perspectives focused. And so thesis statements, as you're going to read, need to be clear and specific. They should be arguable, so it's not a simple statement of fact. And so you want to make sure that you have a position here. You want to make sure that you're expressing that position clearly, and then you're going to be guiding your reader through some of the research that you've done to underscore that position. It needs to be relevant to the topic you've selected, and it needs to give you a roadmap for how you're going to understand the paper. Right? So some examples, right? So a weak thesis statement is that many people drive cars. And so certainly, you could say, well, what does many mean, right? You could talk about public transportation. You could talk about, first versus second world. You can talk about, first versus third world. You can talk about the the waning of individualized cars as a means of transportation. All these things are fine, but the statement many people drive cars without those qualifiers is not particularly argumentative, right? So a stronger thesis might be the increasing reliance on cars in urban areas contributes to air pollution and the decline of the public transportation system. Now, there is something that a reasonable person could theoretically disagree with, and that's a great mark of what a thesis statement is. And so, as we think about the inside-out drafting process, what we really want to think about is we want to think about this as a process. And so, writing is always recursive, but you want to really think about the core of your argument. You want to think about what is it that you're stating. So that thesis statement about cars, right? So you want to think about what am I trying to prove? You want to think about developing supporting arguments, like what topics do people need to understand if they're going to fully understand my thesis? And then you're going to expand this outwards to your intro and conclusion. So how is your intro going to capture your audience? How are they going to bring them into the conversation? And how is your conclusion going to send them off into the next stage of your process? And so right now you're crafting your thesis statement, right? You've already chosen a topic, you've conducted preliminary research. This is what we've been doing the first 3 weeks. You've refined your topic, and you should be able to kind of come up in this week with an answer to your research question. Something that answers it clearly, concisely, and gives you an outline for the direction you're going to go. Once you do that, and in your free write, you're going to identify some of the key points. The key points that you need to hit in order to convince somebody or demonstrate your idea are going to be your topic sentences. And again, one of the things I really like about this textbook is that it gives you a clear definition of what a topic sentence is and good examples of what topic sentences are, so that you can kind of use those to inform your writing. And then one thing to keep in mind as we move forward, and I'm going to spend some time in subsequent modules talking about paragraphing, but really one paragraph equals one idea. And every paragraph should have a topic sentence. It should have a rationale that tells you why that topic is important. It should introduce a support from an outside source. It should explain how that support links to your thesis. And then it should conclude that idea by connecting to your next paragraph or linking back to your overarching thesis statement. And throughout this process, what you're going to do is you're going to be using evidence. So you've already found a decent amount of evidence. I've read a lot of it. But you're also going to be looking at new evidence. As you write, you determine evidence that you're missing or facts that could help your argument. And it's okay to add that to the writing process as you go. And so I'm going to glaze over this a little bit, writing your body paragraphs, crafting your intro, and crafting your conclusion, because that's the direction that we're headed. Throughout this, we're reviewing and revising, right? And so we want to make sure that we're focusing on this whole process. And the goal of this class really should be to develop a process that you can repeat, right? So when you move into your next course, when you move into your next term, when you move into the conclusion of your program, you can look back and you can say, well, I know no matter what paper I'm given, if it's a persuasive paper, if it's a research-driven paper, I can use this framework to move through that process effectively. So that every time you're facing a new writing situation, you're not treating it as though it's the first time. So as always, if you have any questions about this, I know I gave you a quick high-level overview of writing. You're going to be doing a lot more detailed reading about this process throughout this week. But I think sometimes it's helpful to think about the large picture before you drill down and look at some particulars and know what the direction is that we're heading, or where the direction is that we're heading. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I will see you all in the discussion board. Thank you.